This is B. Monarch. Today we're continuing with the series on misconceptions in meditation, and today's topic is enlightenment. What a huge word with equally huge misperceptions and expectations. I don't even like to use the word because there's so many expectations around it, misguided expectations. I prefer to use the word milestones because that's what it is. In the 2,500-year-old tradition that trained me, there are 4 milestones, and we'll talk about that a little later in detail. I'll describe what the milestones are so that we can all understand what enlightenment really is. But first, let's look at the misconceptions. Misconception number 1, we see lights and that means we're enlightened. I heard of a guy who saw lights during his meditation and he started to run around the courtyard saying, "I'm enlightened." Isn't that cute? Misconception number 2, when you're enlightened, you become perfect. Whatever perfection means to the person looking at you, they think you should be doing everything that they want in the way that they want at the time that they want. And when their definition of perfection changes, then you need to change along too. Otherwise, of course, you're not enlightened. Your meditation isn't even working. Misconception number 3, enlightened people are dead. We can't function anymore. We don't live in society. We shouldn't be wearing nice clothes. We shouldn't have nice hair. We shouldn't be talking to you right now in a setting like this. We shouldn't be this. We shouldn't be that. Misperception number 4, women, especially women who are not monastics, can't become enlightened. I don't know where that came from. Misperception number 5, enlightened people have a certain luminosity, a certain glow, a stamp that says, "I'm enlightened," or a certificate that says, "This person is enlightened." I even saw a guy trying to live stream himself becoming enlightened as if there's something to see outside. There's nothing to see outside. It's all happening inside. The reality is, it's such an intensely internal and private and personal process that those of us who go through it very often don't talk about it. Some people never talk about it. Some people take a long time to tell even their closest teachers. And that was what happened to me. It took 9 months before I told the teacher I worked most intensively with and who I was closest to. Monks and nuns, by the way, aren't allowed to talk about that process that they went through. It's part of the hundreds of rules that they need to follow. Now let's look at the 4 milestones. Officially, they're called the 4 stages of enlightenment. I call them milestones for reasons I explained earlier. The key thing about these milestones is this. There are 10 tendencies that produce behaviors that keep us locked into a vicious circle of love and hate, pleasure and pain, birth and death, death and rebirth. It's a vicious circle that's very difficult to escape. And the circle is caused by 10 tendencies. And at each of the 4 milestones, a few of these 10 tendencies are erased from our being forever. It feels like thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years of chains are falling away. At milestone number 1, 3 of these tendencies fall away for good. One of them is the belief that we are our sensations. Everything we encounter in life produces a sensation in specific parts of the body, sometimes throughout the body. Every sound that we hear, everything we taste, everything that we think, everything that we smell, all these things we encounter throughout our lives produce sensations, and we tend to think we are these sensations, and these sensations make us. When we cross the first milestone, we know that's not true, because we begin to see what exactly it is that makes us at the most fundamental level of life. And I've written about this in great detail in my blog. The link is below. I've shown a diagram to show what it is that makes us who we are, the precise process, and I've provided an example, a real-life example of how this happens from day to day. Please go and take a look at it. Another tendency that falls away is blind belief in rites and rituals. The key word here is blind belief. Rites and rituals are not in themselves bad. They are useful for some people, sometimes, and in some ways. The third tendency that falls away for good is any doubt in the efficacy of the practice, of the path that has brought us to this point. Well, if it's brought us this far, obviously it works. At milestone number 2, the 7 remaining tendencies are weakened. They don't fall away yet, but they're weakened to a point where they don't come up as frequently as before, as obsessively as before. When we cross this milestone, we can feel a difference in our internal landscape. What's the difference? Before the second milestone, the waves in our internal landscape were huge and strong, and they drove us to behave in certain ways, and they drove us incessantly. It's almost like we couldn't stop ourselves. But after we cross the second milestone, the waves are no longer as strong. They become a lot weaker, a lot finer, and we're not being driven as hard to behave as before. And because we're not driven very hard, we can stop and say, I'm not going to behave this way because I know the consequences are going to trap me in that vicious circle. In milestone 3, 2 of the weakened patterns fall away for good. One of these is cravings for all things sensual. The key thing here is craving. I'm not saying sensual things are bad in themselves, but the craving for them can be a problem, because when we crave for something, it's like an obsession. We can't feel alive without them. We can't feel that things are okay without them. We can't feel like life is worth living without them. We can't feel like we're at peace without them. Let's look at a simple example. It's a real-life example. Someone loves to look at sunsets. It makes her feel alive. It makes her feel relaxed. It makes her feel wonderful. But there was a stretch of time when she couldn't look at sunsets because she was just busy, or it was raining, it was winter, it was dark all the time, and she felt horrible, crappy, bad. We shouldn't have to depend on anything external to ourselves to feel like things are okay, that life is worth living. We can still taste and enjoy good food, but we don't depend on that pleasure it brings to make us feel like we're alive. And the same goes for music, touch, whatever it is. So that's what craving for all things sensual means. The other tendency that falls away for good at this stage is aversion. That's the opposite of cravings. We've come to the fourth and final milestone. There are 5 tendencies left, and at this stage, all 5 fall away for good. Their conceit, which is pretty self-explanatory, restlessness, and it's a very fine, subtle kind of restlessness at this stage. It's not the kind of restlessness that drives us to go out there to play tennis for 3 hours, and after that we got to go to John's house for a barbecue, and after that we have to go dancing with Rachel, and after that we have to go drinking with the boys, and so on. The restlessness at this stage is so fine we can almost not perceive them. They make us want to twitch a little. Maybe have a little subtle thought. Maybe just move a little. It's that subtle. Another tendency that falls away is the desire to exist in fine material planes. This is one of the higher stages of meditation that feels wonderful, and many of us want to stay there forever. But if we stay there, then we're not going to progress. And the next thing that falls away is the desire to exist in non-material planes. This is an even finer, higher stage of meditation. It's one of the big traps for people who want to progress in meditation, because it feels so amazing that we just don't want to leave that stage. And the last thing to fall away is ignorance. Ignorance about what keeps us trapped in this vicious circle. What is it that drives us to behave in certain ways that keeps us trapped in this circle, and how to get out of it? It takes an experienced teacher to tell which stage a meditator has gone to in these 4 milestones. The teacher needs to know what the experiences the person has in meditation, and the teacher needs to observe the person's behavior over a long period of time, over many different types of circumstances. The teacher needs to see consistent behavior through all these different circumstances. And according to the ancient texts, another sign that someone has crossed at least the first milestone is this: the person is able to see precisely what it is that makes us who we are, the building blocks, the ingredients, and the process that these ingredients go through to make us exactly who we are. I've written about this in my blogs with references to these ancient texts, and I've also described the ingredients and the process that makes us who we are in great detail. There's a diagram, and there are everyday life examples in that diagram to help us understand how this works in real life. The links to those blogs are below in the description. Please go and take a look at them.